today's topic that I really wanted to cover when it comes to writing is to outline or not to outline. This is one of the biggest debates writers tend to have with each other, believe it or not. Many authors believe in perfect structure, and that outlines are absolutely necessary in order to write a story. Others will tell you that outlines ruin a fresh story and that you need to write organically. Most writers who follow the outline method will also constantly refer to something called the three-act structure. I actually myself referred to it several times already. And yes, we will be talking about that. So let us use our research abilities to attempt and figure out what is important for us and what is important to us. And I say us as in our quest for discovery for ourselves. The key to being a proficient writer is to be a unique writer. Everyone's going to hold a different set of tools and enjoy the different mediums. This is like any other artist of any kind. Some artists prefer to use digital art, others prefer to use traditional, some like paints, others like graphite, some like traditional art on certain programs. This is kind of the same type of thing, mixed media, such. The key to this type of debate is what works for you. There is not a right answer. So let's look at each one individually, the pros and cons, and see if we can find a good medium for ourselves. So the argument for being what I would call an organic writer, or a writer more commonly that does not use an outline, the most common one is being fresh and making it far more enjoyable for the writer. It is liberating just to sit down and adventure as your character. You never know how a story will end up. That is not to say that you don't have certain goals in mind, but the story kind of takes on a life of its own. This allows for a more realistic set of scenarios to play out because it develops and evolves naturally. Sometimes you go down a rabbit trail and you get off on little tangents, but that's not always a bad thing. Just because it leads nowhere does not mean that you didn't develop something interesting that the reader may enjoy. It's more of a fluid process that kind of creates itself. However, sometimes this can also give most authors a lack of control. And it does have a heavy chance of just absolutely failing. And what I mean by that is it may not turn out the way you had in mind. I've used this method before, and it has led me to create some interesting things. I generally do not do novels that way. If you're writing a novel, I prefer structure. But we're not talking about me right now. We're talking about just the organic writer. The organic writer, I imagine, though, has more fun when they're writing and does not tend to get writer's block as often. I would also imagine it would take a great amount of trust for an author to feel comfortable doing this without any kind of outline at all. I mean, you always feel the need to plan things out. It's just human nature. We like control. So when you're dealing with a free-ranged story that you're wrangling, it might be hard to keep it in the proper direction. If sense is what is most important, then this is probably the bulk of amateur writing. And the reason why I put that in, I don't mean to say it's a bad style of writing. What I'm saying is that it takes a special skill in order to really have a hold and master of being able to organically write a novel. It also at times has you going back through your story and discovering that things just aren't really as together as you originally thought they were. You can make glaring mistakes that needs fixing, so I can imagine an editor without the proper relationship with you would have a nightmare on their hands working through this kind of style. I'm not trying to discourage this, I'm just being honest. Editors do tend to charge by how difficult the task was. If it's more difficult, they charge more. So this might cost you to do this style. Though, who knows? Wow, was that pejorative from Donald Trump that I just did? Oh gosh, I've been watching that man too much. Um, Now, what are the benefits of an outline? The big one is being structure. That is essentially what you're doing. The second one is probably speed of completion. Having an outline is like having a blueprint, and it requires assembly. It does not take much time to create an outline, so it's not much of a negative, but it does take time to make an outline. I know sometimes when I'm making an outline myself, I'm just salivating to just write the damn book. Um, the goal of having an outline, though, far outweighs the negatives, I think, because it does lower the chances of failure. Because of this, though, people have created templates as to how the perfect story should be. This is called the 3-act structure, which we will be going into heavily for our own understanding of stories. The danger in this, though, is creating something that I would like to call a Frankenstory. It is an assembly of parts. It often feels uninspired, unoriginal, and absolutely forced. When you watch a terrible movie or a TV show that feels just generic or cookie cutter, it's because it probably followed this method too methodically. That's a thing. There's a very serious danger in following 3-act structure. Every writer should be aware of that. Few of us will actually admit to this danger because we like to think that it's very comfortable, and a lot of people take it as the Bible, you know? In fact, I've met writers that insist that if you do not follow 3-act structure, you do not have a story. Another danger is boredom, and I say this because I get bored sometimes working with a 3-act structure, because it can be bland, white rice, boring, nothing appealing about it, you're just going through the motions. And that is not what art is meant to be. Art is free, wild, and needs to be tamed. It is like a fire, and is anything but structure. My approach is a fusion of both. I call it organic structure. I create a solid outline. I do that so that I have a structure to follow. But I treat that kind of like lattice fencing. And the story is Ivy. Ivy will crawl up a lattice fence however it desires. And while it's structured in a certain way, it's going to grow up this fencing, but it's not necessarily going to take on the shape that you naturally intended it to. So, this may sound like an exaggeration, but you can literally create hundreds of stories from a single outline. I think that most people don't seem to realize that. If you follow structure too much, it becomes bland. But if you follow structure slightly, you have endless possibility. It doesn't need to be structure or no structure. I don't think veering too much to either side is really healthy as a writer. One risks absolute chaos, and the other risks a chance of leaving your readers feeling like they've read this story before. The choice is really yours if you want to do an outline or not. I'm going to suggest doing one, but that is my own personal preference, and is in no way, shape, or form gospel. Remember to never lose your playful love of exploration as a writer. We need to remain childlike in our imagination and mind while being the genius super race of puppeteers that we are. Remember, keep the readers entertained. That is your entire goal, not your adherence to rules or ostracization of them. You're not edgy or a rebel or a hall monitor. No, no one's going to arrest you if you don't follow technique, but they will try.